Week's edition of Career Change Talks. And it's me, your host, Veronica Mudukwe Yusuf. I am the founder of Sterling Tech Solutions, and I help professionals who are aspiring to get into the privacy space to develop relevant skills, the confidence to launch out into this career path. So today we're talking privacy notices. Now, as an aspiring privacy analyst, or maybe you have just gotten a job as a privacy analyst and this question comes up. How would you keep our privacy notice updated? And that is a question that we usually ask as hiring managers during interviews, because it is very, very crucial that you have an understanding of how that works and how you can support us as an organization. So if you were asked that question, which actually comes up a lot, we have a few people within the academy that have actually experienced or had that question asked to them. And essentially what we're looking for there is how, what is your approach? How would you ensure that we are keeping our privacy notice up to date? You understand what the elements are, or maybe you have just been hired and your first mandate or your first role or your first task is to look into their privacy notice. What are the things that you would look out for? Let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. And please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. So we're talking privacy notices. So I'm going to take it from two angles. Now, if you had an interview where I'm asking you about our privacy, helping us to keep our privacy notice updated, what are the elements that should be in your privacy notice, and how would you approach keeping that privacy notice updated? So two things: your understanding. I'm trying to assess whether you understand what the elements of a privacy notice actually is, and then if you actually are familiar with the way that you can keep that privacy notice updated. Now, this privacy notice could be across different sites. So in different scenarios, in different contexts, different things would apply. So what I would say, hello, I'm sorry, I have missed a lot, perhaps. No, I've just started. Okay, I've just started, don't worry. I'm just talking about privacy notice. So if I was asking you as a hiring manager at an interview, and I know that we have privacy notices across different brands. So let's say we have, maybe one of the organizations I've worked with, we had like 30 something brands, and they all had websites. Okay. And on these websites, you should have a privacy notice, because it is a way that you are demonstrating your principle around notice and transparency, which is a requirement from the GDPR. So how do you ensure that you are actually compliant with these particular requirements? So if you are hired as a privacy analyst, or maybe you're at an interview and I'm trying to hire somebody that would come in and help us to get that updated, how would you respond to that? There are a few things to think about. You will talk about the fact that a privacy notice is a compliance documentation, or document, if you like, that needs to be updated regularly, because it's one that really communicates our data handling practices, outside, maybe to our customers, to our clients. So it is outward facing. It would usually be on the website. What are the elements that you would look for? So if, for example, you got on the job and they say, oh, well, the last time we had an update done was 3, 4, 5 years, so we really need to do one. How do you go about it? First of all, you look at it, and but you've got to also know what you're looking for. So what are the elements of a privacy notice? A couple of things. One, the privacy notice needs to communicate the data handling practices within that organization, how they handle, personal data, for example, or, how they handle, so process use, as it were. So the entire data life cycle. So that needs to be communicated to say that section must be in the privacy notice. The second one also, you also want to look at, how probably their third party, suppliers, or contractors? So are they sharing data with third parties? Is there any data sharing, relationship, with different businesses, as it were? You've got to be able to communicate that within a privacy statement or the privacy notice. Another thing, you don't have to break down and put thousands of other suppliers that you have, so you can categorize them, which is something that we do as well. Or you could actually have that list maybe in an Excel file, and then you provide a hyperlink within the privacy notice. Now that is something that you don't have to really you don't have to provide it to everybody. So it might be a case of putting a system in place that will allow you to communicate to people, those that are interested. So for example, maybe there's a potential customer who wants to work with you, but they also want to know the categories or the type of contractors that you work with, because probably that's part of their own due diligence. So if, for example, they want to ask you for that, you could provide that. Maybe you don't put it on your website, but you say to them, maybe contact us, provide a contact detail, so they can send that to these contact details and say, hey, we would like, a list of your suppliers or your subcontractors, as it were, so that we can make sure that they're not, one of the ones we don't want to work with. So that is a system that you can put in place. Another way, you could actually make it subscription based, such that people actually will pay for you to give them access to that list. So the question, right, is one, knowing what the elements of a privacy notice should be. Two, then also you talk about the fact that it's important to have a system that will enable the organization to keep the privacy notice updated. So for example, all the various departments that probably feed into the privacy notice or that use the privacy notice, they must have a way that they will communicate any changes, any updates. So maybe, for example, they have onboarded new suppliers over time since the last update. They need to be able to, feed that into a system somewhere, so that the next time you want to update that privacy notice, it's just a matter of copying that across. So that's one. Another thing you also want to have in your privacy notice is you've got to talk about data subject access requests or data subject rights, saying that you have a mechanism that allows your customers, your clients, if required, of course, to exercise their rights, because a lot of these privacy laws, including the General Data Protection Regulation, gives your data subjects rights either to delete their data, to access their data, to maybe to restrict processing. So there are several rights. Therefore, within your privacy notice, you have to have a section that also addresses that. And then it also communicates to the people that access your privacy notice that if they wish to exercise their rights, this is how they can go about it. So we've talked about the purpose and the processing activities that you handle within that organization across your different departments. So you state that in your privacy statement. The second one, we talked about third parties that you work with. You also want to be able to talk about that. And if, of course, there are data sharing agreements, you've got to communicate that. Then cross-border transfer. So are you transferring data? Probably if you're a UK-based business, are you transferring data outside of the UK, maybe to the US and all of that? If that is the case, you also have to communicate that. And then you also need to let everyone know that you've got adequate safeguards in place when data is being shared. So that is one. Another one is data retention. You also have to talk about the fact that you've got a policy, you've got your data retention schedule, you're able to say data that is being used or being processed has a life cycle, for example, from the time the data is in your custody, let's put it that way, from the time the data is being accessed to the time the data is deleted and archived. You've got a retention policy, you've got a retention schedule that can be provided on request. So that is that one. So we've talked about cross-border transfers, we talked about data retention, we talked about data subject rights, we talked about use or purpose of the processing, different processing activities that the organization handles, or is in that does. Let's put it that way. Another one, you also want to talk about contact. So for example, you need to have a section that says if you wish to send a complaint, if you wish to to reach out for whatever, for data protection, privacy related matters, here is a contact. Now you may not necessarily need to put someone's name, but if you've got a data protection officer, you're free, you're free to put their details if that is something that has been discussed and agreed within the organization. Or you can put maybe a contact, an email, for example, which is maybe a shared email, and that is just something that can be in use. That also should be in your privacy notice. So those are the core elements that you would have in your privacy notice. Lawful basis of processing, very important, because you want to be able to communicate to your users that, okay, for each processing activity that we have outlined, we've got a legal basis, and here it is. So whether it is consent you are relying on, whether it's legitimate interest, whether it is a legal obligation, whether it is contract, whatever the legal basis for each processing activity that you have outlined in that privacy notice, you also have to be able to state that in, make sure that it is simple to understand. In some cases, some people might actually have a table, maybe on that legitimate interest, where they would actually break it down, to say for every processing activity that we rely on legitimate interest, these just outline them, and it's very clear and easy to understand, and they might even state the rationale and things like that. So that is going really detailed. Now, all of these are very important elements that should be in your privacy notice. So if, for example, you have been asked to review a privacy statement or privacy notice, these are the things that you want to look out for, just making sure that they're also using the right statements. They're not being too generic. They're not saying things like applicable, or when applicable, or if applicable, and try to give it as much detail as possible. So you're upfront, you're transparent, doesn't seem like you're hiding anything. So you look at that. Now, in terms of keeping it updated, again, it is having that system, and that system is not anything technical. It could be maybe an Excel, a big Excel that is hosted, in a centralized location within the organization. It could be maybe an intranet that you would have built over time, and then you, of course, communicate to the entire business, as it were. Those that, of course, need to know, you let them know that we've got this system in place. So whenever you make any updates or any changes, whether to your suppliers, whether to different processing activities, as it were, any of these changes, or maybe you purchase new IT systems that, of course, has not been captured before, you want to also make sure that you are feeding all of this into this particular Excel, let's put it that way. Or if you have a robust system that allows you to do that, I think OneTrust allows OneTrust is one of the big players. Not all organizations may be able to afford OneTrust, because I know with the OneTrust data mapping module, there is your assessment automation, which is one that updates the data inventory. So that, again, if you have that, then it's something you can purchase, and then you make it available to all the various departments. Maybe, of course, from a governance perspective, there will be someone accountable and monitoring these changes and updating this system, so that whenever you are, you need to make changes, or you need to update your privacy notice, you've got this to hand, rather than asking, and trying to run around to say, okay, what changes have we made and stuff like that. And that is how I would have done it. And that's how I've done it over time. And if you were to answer that question, it's two things: outlining the main elements of a privacy notice. Then the second one is putting a system in place to keep it updated. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I will be posting different content and information, again, about the details. So again, if maybe I've gone too fast, or you're catching this in the replay, I think I already posted two today, two reels, and they, in the caption, you will actually see it's more outlined and it is easy for you. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop a question as soon as when you're watching this in the replay. You can chat to me in the DM. I've also been talking to a few people, and also I'd like to say that we're not government funded, we're privately run, and therefore our programs are not free programs, they are all paid. So if you are, of course, thinking of joining our bootcamp, just make sure that you know it's something that you're ready for, and you're ready to make that investment. So our next bootcamp is now open, and we're taking, so the guys that started last week, I think almost 2 weeks now, the June guys are already in the flow, and so but July is open, and so you can still join our 12 weeks data privacy and AI governance program, which is very practical, very hands-on. You gain hands-on experience, you get a reference from us once you've gotten a job. We also help you with career coaching, looking at your CV, interview prep, and all the practical elements that you require in order for you to be confident enough to get out there. So that's me done for today. If you want to join us, either comment or get into the DM and let us know, and we'll be able to give you all details that you need to sign up. Another thing I'm going to talk about probably tomorrow is about certifications for business analysts. So again, you know that we don't only offer a privacy program or bootcamp on data protection and privacy bootcamp. We also have business analysis and project management, and there has been a recent update within the IBA curriculum, if you like, and therefore I'm going to come and talk about it because we are an IBA endorsed education provider, so we're going to be communicating that, and also I might be bringing on our partner that is based in the US. For those of you who want to do the ECBA exam prep, that is something that we also offer. You can do the exam prep, I think, within across 2 days, and then you write the exam immediately, and it is pass guaranteed. So that's something I'm talking about at some point this week. And yeah, that's all we've got for this week's edition of our Career Change Talks. Until I come your way again next time, make sure that you are not staying stagnant. You're learning something new each week. Bye-bye.